So now I'm going to talk about some of the different UI elements and the programming for that. So one of the things that we made was, I'll just go over how the start and stop and reset logic works. So when the start button is pressed, it's going to run this start function. So it's going to first check, or it's going to set video play to false. It's going to make sure that this onTor boolean is active, and or it's going to check that it's not already in a Tor. So once you press start, it's going to start the Tor, and that just sets that variable to true, indicating that it's already on a Tor. And that kind of comes into play later. But so after it's on a Tor, it's going to grab the robot object, and then it's going to send a plan of chosen locations to that robot object, and we'll kind of go over what that means later. This locations object is kind of just, it's a hard-coded list at this current time. Or not hard-coded, it's a global list variable that has all of the Tor locations that the user has selected for the current Tor. And then this robot object has a function to execute that list of locations. So when those locations are selected, the planner is going to plot the route to those locations, and then it's going to execute. So for now, this simple plan function, it's in this planner.swift, and right now it takes 2 points and then draws a straight line between them and tells the robot to just go straight to each of those. So for each location the user has selected, it's going to just take that location, and then it's going to calculate a bunch of intermediate steps for that location. So first it's going to retract the kickstand so that it can move. Then it's going to transition to the drive state, or the drive to state. So the drive to state just takes an x and y coordinate, and then it calculates its current direction and angle it should be at to that point from its current point. And from there, it first it activates an angular controller so that it'll line up straight with the point it wants to go to. And then after it's lined up within 20 degrees, it'll activate a distance proportional controller, and then it will just drive to that location, and it'll proportionally slow down as it gets closer and closer. I think slowing starts at like a couple feet, so it's not going to slow down that much until it gets there. And then once it's there, it's going to actually turn to the angle that's programmed into each location. So this lock.x, lock.y, each location that is passed in from the ViewController to the simple plan function, it will have an x coordinate, a y coordinate, and an angle. And the x and y is just the position. The angle is actually just the angle it should go to before playing a video or continuing on to the next point. So it drives to that location, then it turns to the angle that's programmed into that specific destination. And then if there is a video file for that destination, it will play the video for it. So it'll go, it'll deploy the kickstand, it'll transition into the stop mode. And transitioning into the stop mode, it will just kind of make it so it doesn't move. And then remember, in the ViewController, it's checking it's constantly checking if it's in the stop state and it's within the target location, within 3 feet of the target location and within 20 degrees of the target angle, which it should be at this point. Then it will play the video. So by transitioning into stop, it's kind of opening itself up to play the video. And so the other part, when it's in stop mode and you press start again, it will continue on to the next instruction. So from after it plays the video, it'll go back to the main screen, but the kickstand is deployed and it won't move. So to make it move again, you press start, and that'll resume onto the next step of retracting the kickstand. And then it will drive to, so this is just a convenience for the school setup that we had, and this is telling it to just go back to it goes back to x coordinate 0, y coordinate, or not x coordinate 0. It just goes back to the center of the hallway in the y coordinate, and then it tries to maintain the current x coordinate as it does that. So this part can be modified in according to what you want to do with it. And yeah, ideally the simple plan function would be rewritten to kind of incorporate a more complex map of the environment and actually plan a path through the environment around obstacles, instead of just having to hard code and drive directly to each location individually. So yeah, the simple plan is really a placeholder for a more complex planning algorithm. But yeah, so now we're going to go back to the start button. We kind of branched off from that. So we know what happens when we press the start button and it starts a tour. So now we're going to go on to the other condition. So let's say the tour is already started, and you press the start button. Well, what that's going to do is just run robot.resume, which is going to skip an instruction in the robot or in the list of steps that the robot is currently performing. Or not skip an operation, it'll go back to the original state. So for example, if you press the stop button once, it'll transition into the stop mode, but it will store the state that existed before, or that it was in before you press the stop button. So if you press the stop button, it'll make the robot stop moving, and then you press the start button, it will jump back to the state that it was in before you pressed the stop button. It's more easy to just play around with it and kind of understand. But yeah, basically, start button, if it's already on a tour, the start button will just resume the current mode, or the previous mode of operation. So next we'll go on to the stop button. What the stop button does is it just grabs the robot object and runs the robot's stop function. So the robot stop function is just a thing that interrupts the main control loop and just tells it, or it just sends zeros to the motors, and that causes it to stop moving forward. But it's also programmed so if you press the stop button more than once, so say you double tap the stop button, or you stop and then you press stop again, then it will actually deploy the kickstands. And currently that messes with the resume logic, because if it's in stop and then you press stop again, then the current mode and the previous mode are both stop, so by resuming you just go back to stop. So that could probably be made simpler for users in the future, or maybe have like a dedicated resume button or something like that. But for now, that's the current behavior. If you double press it, it'll deploy the kickstands and kind of lock itself. So the idea with this is just you're done using it, you can double press stop and then take it back to the start location, or carry it back to the start location, and then just reset the system. So yeah, the last main button at the bottom there that we're going to cover as part of the ViewController, or it's the last of the 3 bottom buttons, is the reset button. So that's in the center. If it's on a tour, the only thing it does is end the tour, and then it's going to just set the current mode to stop if it's not already in the stop mode. So this is good for testing. Again, if it's actually working in production as it's supposed to, you probably want to redo this logic so that it's isn't such a, because you don't want to just press a button and then immediately forget everything about the tour. But yeah, that's the current behavior. It doesn't reset the position or anything yet, but yeah, if you accidentally press it once, it'll just end the tour. So if you double press the reset button, though, it does reset the position. So by double pressing the reset button, it's zeroing out the current position, and the current position, regardless of where it is in the facility, becomes the new 000 point. So because that's such a huge change, there actually is a little bit of a dialogue of, hey, are you sure you want to reset, or are you sure you want to zero the position? And then you have to press yes for it to actually operate. So if you press no, nothing really happens. It'll just print out a bunch of stuff. And yeah, then it just exits out of the dialogue. So yeah, that's the reset button. And one of the last thing that's part of the ViewController is the actual location selection interface. So the way that's managed is there's first this list of possible locations that's programmed in, and this just stores, like for our example, it stored the 3 locations that we wanted to go to. Yeah, in the future this can be expanded to any number of locations, but as you can see, we kind of went over this earlier, but each location has an x coordinate in inches. This is all inches, and then angles degrees. The y coordinate is also in inches, the angle is in degrees, and the name is just a name that's displayed on the screen for that video. And then it has a video name. So if there's no video name, then in the simple planner there is some logic. So if there is no video name, then it will not actually stop at that location. So the idea with this was you could just not include the video name, and it would become an intermediate destination that you can just go to, say if there's an obstacle, and then the planner will just know, okay, well, I don't have to stop here, so I'm just going to continue on to the next one after it gets there. So, and then the logic for each location in the simple planner, because this location format works pretty tightly with the simplified planning system. So it just tells the robot to go to this XY coordinate from its current position, and then it tells the robot to face that angle from its current position. Then it'll go on to the next location and continue like that. So, yeah, and then, like I said, if there's no video name, it doesn't stop. If there is a video name, then it stops and plays that video when it gets to that location. So, yeah, that's just the list of possible locations. Now, to actually create a customized tour, the ViewController object has this internal list of locations. So it just starts out with the first possible location, which is really just for our demo. It was, the center of the hallway, 300 something inches forward. And then to actually add locations and customize the tour, there's these 3 location buttons. There. So location button pressed 1, location button pressed 2, location button pressed 3, because our demo is just hard-coded to 3 locations. Ideally, instead of buttons, there would be some sort of list that you can scroll through and kind of like drag items or double tap to add or whatever. But for now, location button press 1. It adds the second location in this list of possible locations onto the array, and then if you press the location button and then location 1 is already there, then it just deletes it. So it's kind of like a toggle. It'll either add it or delete it, and it'll add it in the order that you press it. So if you press 3, 2, 1, 3 will be the first destination, 2 will be the second. But if you press 1, 2, 3, it'll be 1 is the first location, 2 is the second, and so on. And if you press 1, 2, 3, and then you press 1 again, then it'll just delete the 1, and then the first location will be 2, and then the second location will be 3. So that's kind of just like a really simplified location selection interface for 3 locations. But yeah, and then we've gone over, all of the magic really happens in the planner. The planner takes those locations and converts that into a set of instructions that the robot can carry out to arrive at each location and play a video or continue on to the next location, regardless of, or depending on whether or not it has a video file attached to that location. So yeah, that's it for the ViewController.